think each kid is different, so you have to approach discipline in a completely different way. But I'm with random about getting it creative. Now, I've been an aunt for half of my life, really, actually more than half of my life. So I've been doing this a long time. So I've realised in my babysitting techniques that some kids respond to different things. So some kids I can sit down and reason with. Other kids, I just have to bring them to the mirror and say, look at yourself, you're a mess. What are you doing? Relax, calm down. And the same
Hi, I'm Sophie Hannah.
I'm Anissa.
And I'm Luanda Yasmin. Welcome to the 15th episode of Ethnically Speaking. We are three smart, curious, opinionated and highly melanated women here representing the UK. We will be discussing everything and anything affecting our communities, from pop culture to politics and everything in between. Absolutely nothing is off limits, and we always promise to keep it 100% real. So forget tiptoeing around topics and technically speaking, because today we are ethnically speaking. So Sophie, what do you want to talk about today?
After receiving almost 25,000 complaints about Diversity's Black Lives Matters inspired dance routine on ITV's Britain's Got Talent, TV regulator Ofcom have said that they are not going to be going forward in an investigation. Yet the scale of the complaints, making Diversity's performance the second most complained about TV moment in history, has really revealed worrying public sentiment. Audiences say that they love diversity when it comes to feeling good, but when it comes to vocalizing injustice, which is faced by many of the people in diversity, the group are told to shut up and just dance. So I want to know, when it comes to the British public, why do we think that they took such a big offence at this particular performance? And are the public only interested in black people when it comes to entertainment value, but not when it comes to really respecting our rights as people?
I think they took offence simply because it's harder to ignore when it's on mainstream TV. So it's kind of like, do you know what I mean? It's easy to say, oh, I didn't see that news article, or I didn't see that YouTube clip or anything like that. Yeah. But if you come in onto their favourite Saturday night show, well, I think the show comes on Saturday night whenever it comes on, you come onto their favourite family Saturday night show, then they can't ignore it. They've actually now seen it. And then at that point, it's almost like a choice has to be made of what they're going to do now that they have that knowledge. And I think a lot of them don't want to make that choice, but just simply because the same reasons why we haven't why racism or racial inequality hasn't been a mainstream topic in British media, is because people don't want to deal with it. They either don't want to deal with the realities of it, or they just kind of want to hide their hands, or they don't want to have to admit to anything that maybe they've done wrong in the past. Now, to answer your second question about their interest in black people, is that, you know, the value for the entertainment, I don't know. And I know it's a bit weird for me to say, but I'm saying I don't know. And I say I don't know because I feel like I'd have to be one of them to really know what it is that they want from us particularly. Now, history does suggest to me that possibly they only want us for entertainment and things like that when we speak out about other things. Like, for example, if I'm thinking about like Dave's Brit Awards performance, or if I think about, you know, that whole Stormzy controversy, them getting his words jumbled, they weren't happy about that, and they love Stormzy and Dave, but they weren't happy as soon as they spoke out about racial things. So then that would make me believe that they only like us for entertainment value. But once again, I don't know if I can certainly say it that's what it is.
I'm with you on the first point that you made, because I think, you know, firstly, what Diversity did was a great performance. I think it was really wholesome. I think it was fun for all the family.
Luanda, of course you thought it was wholesome.
fun for the whole family.
It was fun for all the family. I thought it was perfect and very PG. Like, it was great. And it was a message of love and unity. And if anyone actually paid attention to the words in the poem, they would understand that their message was love and unity. So let's be really honest about the backlash, you know, because this performance very tastefully displayed what we've been dealing with for the past 6 months. And we all know if they had only made reference to the coronavirus alone, that there would be no outrage. So I find it funny when I see this many people get bent out of shape because they're shedding light on, like you said, Anissa, something that people would rather ignore. They're continuing a conversation about something that people don't want to talk about. But it's funny to me because most of the people who are in such uproar about this, most of the people that get in uproar when people make references in arts or in conversations to Black issues, that you are in uproar about being reminded of something that we're never allowed to forget. So it just makes me think, you do realize that by seeing it or by talking about it, it doesn't actually mean that you have to experience it. Whereas Black people can't change the channel if there's something that we don't like. We can't call Ofcom and complain about systemic racism. Like, you do understand that just because you watch the diversity performance, you don't actually have to deal with the issues that the Black community deal with. It kind of feels like they don't get that.
Yeah. I had a real issue with people saying it was political because, I mean, yes, first of all, Black Lives Matter, and the fact of saying that Black lives matter enough not to be shown a lot of aggression or violence or to be killed for just existing, that's a human right. But if we talk about it from a political sense where we're saying that there should be better structures in place, a lot of the acts that are on Britain's Got Talent, I feel like are in the similar vein. So I watch Britain's Got Talent, like my nieces love it as well. Like, it is family entertainment, but they have acts on there that talk about climate change, that talk about disabilities in young people. They talk about bullying. So they have acts that will come up. There was a group that David Williams put through straight to the finals, and they were a group of disabled children and had various medical conditions. And they were talking about, you know, we should be accepted too. They had a climate change and people talking about the state of the world and the rubbish that's in the sea and where we're all headed. I'm like, why is no one writing to Ofcom about that? Because that's just as much a human right and a political thing. Like, they're both the same. But when you see about Black people, suddenly it's just like, you know, I want 5 minutes when I don't want to have to deal with the real world. And that is a direct quote from someone like on Twitter featured in the Daily Mail. And I, like you said, Luanda, we can't let go of it for 5 minutes. Like, only when we're in safe spaces around family or in our home, we might not have to be constantly reminded about the difficulties that we face. But generally, I'm like, if people are dealing with this 24/7, it's just a sign of privilege and shame for someone to really come out and say that. So I don't know.
I actually find it shocking that people were so outraged by what the diversity's performance, but they weren't outraged about what happened many weeks ago with that reporter on BBC. I just find it like, it baffles my mind. That baffles my mind.
They didn't even get, I bet they didn't even get a tenth of the complaints for someone saying the N-word live on television. But when someone does something to say that we deserve rights and people should be protected, or like you said, it's just like basically a retelling of this year, and they're up in arms. They're just like, someone's using the most offensive word that you could probably say to a person, a Black person of colour, but that one was like, meh.
Honestly, I'm with you. It's just shocking to me. We're not upset at a racial slur, but we're upset that people were popping and locking in the name of a good cause. I can't believe it. I'm so serious.
Popping and locking in the name of a good cause. I love it.
This is just silly. And then I personally loved how Alicia handled it. When I saw her come through with that little necklace with the BLM
necklace.
She's such a queen.
Here for Alicia.
I love her.
Yeah. I guess one of my issues as well is that I saw in the Daily Mail and it said that they felt that the performance was inciting racial division. I don't know how, but let's say we go down that path. Let's say it is inciting racial division, even though Ashley Banjo says that he was trying to promote unity. What can we do as Black people to promote unity? Because when we peacefully protest in the Black Lives Matter, You don't want that. Okay. If we marry into like British society to show unity like Meghan, okay, no, we don't want that. If we work, live and pay taxes, well, with the Rindra scandal, that's not enough and we can send you back. So no, not that. If we work in the NHS massively as minority ethnics and we help to make people in this country better, yeah, we don't even get featured when we see a clap for the carers. Like, where is the unity that you want us to show? Because it seems that if we do it through a creative dance, is it?
Yeah. It's too much. It's too much.
I don't know where
Before watershed, how dare you?
It honestly confuses me.
Yeah. It is really frustrating. And I think, especially because I do keep up a lot with, award shows and things like that. And I remember specifically in 2017, when the Las Vegas shooting happened, and that was seriously horrific. Do you guys remember that? Or not really?
Yes, so I think that was the one. Was that the one when there was the outdoor concert and it was someone from the window?
Yes, that's the one. So it was a country music festival, actually, and the man shot from the window for over 10 minutes, Sophie, and he actually killed over 50 people and injured hundreds. And of course, everyone felt that, like, globally, because it was so horrific. But obviously, as it was at a country music festival, the country music industry felt it the most. And then at the following Grammys, there was 4 country performers who actually performed a song called Tears in Heaven and had the names and faces of all the victims behind them on the stage. And it was, to me, it was just as beautiful and just as relevant as what diversity did on the stage. But of course, they didn't receive even a droplet of the backlash that diversity received. So it is it's upsetting, but it's unsurprising to see that this type of backlash is only reserved for Black issues. Because when we talk about, anyone else who's experiencing injustice or who is a victim, we're allowed to be on these big platforms. Like, in terms of music, there's really not a bigger platform that you get that's bigger than the Grammys. So, we can't even two-step on ITV without 25,000 plus people being up in arms about it. It's really ridiculous.
Well, I think it's also important to highlight that even though there were 25,000 complaints, like, the greater proportion of people, like 5 million people watched. So Ashley Banjo said there are a lot of people who stopped him in the street, sent him messages. He says the 25,000 is probably like a snippet. But I think it's important in these moments to really see the underbelly of what's going on in society, because people want to pretend like, oh, we're also accepting the multicultural. I'm like, well, no, we're all not. Because, like we said, it's the second most complained about thing in TV history. And especially, I wanted to specifically talk as well about Black entertainers, because the creative industry, music, dance, that's supposed to be the place that we draw on all of our personal experiences, and usually that's congratulated. So even talking about the Emmys, Adele, do you see that meme when Adele mentioned that she had divorced her husband, and people just like, I can't wait for the next album, it's going to be so good. Now, that's out of order. But it is well known that Adele makes very good albums from heartbreak. Her last album won Grammy of the Year, which is the most prestigious award. But when it comes to Beyonce, this is someone who also uses the things going on in her life, her pain, racism, things experienced in her family as a way to influence her music. But as her music has become more racial, more politicized, she has been shut out from the major awards. So it seems like they want us to be entertainers, but just not in the way that is going to upset anybody. And when it comes to, let's say, Lewis Hamilton or Anthony Joshua, they're happy to be entertained by them. But when they have stood out in terms of Black Lives Matter, they've gotten a lot of backlash. So it just seems like they just want to be a specific type of entertainer.
Yeah. I definitely think that I don't know if it's a big thing, but it's definitely a thing to me that I sometimes think the reason why they backlash at some of these big Black celebrities, because it's almost like a how dare you, like, we let you get this far, we let you get this far, we let you be so successful, and now you're thrown in our face racism. It's like, I think they really, I honestly think it's a how dare you do that, like, how dare you. And I think that's exactly what we saw with diversity. It's like, we made you winners and changed your lot's life, and now you want to come back on the stage you won on and tell us that we're racist. I'm not having it. That's how I felt like it went down.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see that perspective for sure, because I think for me, like, it's just really sad, because you have, you know, people who can say wild things, but I'm seeing, you know, Ashley Banjo was close to tears on the radio, and they're saying that they're getting all this abuse from not even saying anything that crazy. It's ridiculous how controversial a statement like Black Lives Matter is. To say Black Lives Matter, to say Black Lives Matter as well, Black Lives Matter as much, that is really causing 25,000 people to complain. And I could say so many other things, but so I don't know. It's kind of just ridiculous to watch, I think, for me.
Yeah. And I just really hope that we as Black people don't buy into the narrative that we're often told in society, that we can be entertainers, like we're great as footballers or sportsmen or musicians, but, you know, we don't really go into other spheres. Because I think it's time for us to start breaking down some of those barriers as well. And it's just a stereotype. They've said it's proven Black people aren't the fastest or the strongest. But when people believe that, that's why kids are trying to be sportsmen more than anything else, or go into music and things like that. And like the stereotype of Asians being more intelligent or Chinese people being more intelligent, when they're just kind of like, well, no, that's not a thing. You can't be born more so than any other race. So I really hope that we don't buy into this rubbish that people say about us being entertainers.
No, 100%. I definitely agree with you on that. I think it's this whole idea, like, we can do everything apart from be educated. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, we can't be the politicians or we can't be the CEOs, but we could go out and be an athlete.
You can sing, but you're not going to manage the singer. You know, you're not going to own the record label.
Yes.
You can, like, you know, hand in an article, but you're not going to own the newspaper. Like, don't be silly.
Yeah.
So I know we've been talking about Britain's Got Talent, but what I want to speak to you lovely ladies about is physical discipline. Well, as you know it, as beats. Let me break it down correctly for you guys. As beats, as we know, like, physical discipline, beats, has been a staple of Caribbean and African households as an effective method for correcting and deterring bad behaviour in children. However, a new article on medium.com has listed 6 different ways you can discipline your child without getting physical. So they said things like getting them to do chores, or possibly even just talking to them about what they've done wrong. So different suggestions like that. But my question to you guys is physical discipline still needed or even acceptable in 2020? And does anyone have the right to tell you how to discipline your child?
So I'll take the first question first, because I actually think that smacking your kid is a form of punishment that we should just let go of. I think we've had enough. We've done it for enough generations. Let's just let it go, you know? Because I think for children, before you know how to learn for yourself, you learn from your parents. And I think when you punish a child by smacking them, all that you're saying to that child is it is acceptable for bad things to result in physical consequences. And there was a 2011 study that showed that children that were hit are more likely to use hitting to resolve things with their peers and with their siblings. And there was also a group of psychologists that concluded that if a child was hit regularly, they actually become more aggressive than the children who are not. So I don't think it's something that I'd use on my children, because I don't think it's worth it, but I also don't see it as a form of abuse. So I've been reading a lot of articles about how a lot of areas in the UK are trying to make it law to ban smacking. And the only reason why I'm kind of like on the fence with that one, even though I don't think it's a good form of punishment, I'm on the fence with the law, because I just feel like it will get messy. And I feel like a lot of good parents trying to discipline their children will just end up in jail. And you're trying to protect these children by having these laws in place, but you're just going to end up having kids with no parents, because you're just gonna, for example, if you had a next door neighbor, if you saw someone and you had something against them, all you need to say is, oh, I saw that mother smack their child on the bum, and then they could be involved with the police. That's, I don't know about that.
Yeah. And I think, to be honest, when I first started talking about this topic, I was just like, I don't mind a little smack here and there. Like, for me, that's how I first thought, because I was just like, there's a very clear difference between a smack or a spanking and abuse. And I think from things that I have personally heard from people within my friendship circle who are of Black descent, a lot of times it was abuse what people were getting. It wasn't a smack. It was beating kids with whatever's around in complete anger. And for me, I'm like, that's just abuse. That's abuse. A smack on the hand or a smack on the bum when you've tried every other method. For me, I was kind of like, I don't really see a problem with that. And I agree with you, Luanda, that it's going to give a certain amount of power to the authorities that is going to be dangerous. Probably, let's be honest, for minority ethnics, not just Black, but minority ethnics, because proportionally, we spank more. So I'm concerned about that. But I think looking
at tissues know it.
I think looking at reports and things, and like you were saying, Luanda, in terms of the fact that sometimes children who are spanked are more aggressive, or they might, you know, hit out at other children, that made me really concerned, because they're saying like children who are spanked don't do as well in life, and that freaks the hell out of me. Now, I really want to know, in those studies, do they mean the occasional spank like once a month, or do they mean children that are regularly spanked? Because I think there is a difference. So I'm not really sure, but I think I went from I don't mind a little spank here and there, to like, it's something that I'd much more question, because I do feel like there are many other ways that you can discipline a child before you get to physical, I don't want to say violence, a physical form of it.
Yeah, I'm not for spanking at all. I was never spanked because I was such a
that
child.
was what they said. They were saying children who were spanked are more likely to spank. I was spanked. Children who weren't spanked are less likely to spank. So statistically, you found that it's true.
I was not spanked. I was such a good child. No, but I was.
So were your siblings, Anissa?
Yes. Well, I'd say this. My older siblings, I think, definitely was spanked, but I honestly just think by the time my mum got to me, she was just tired, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Fair enough.
In all honesty, I don't think it was this personal preference. I just honestly think she was tired, and there was two of us, like me and Anissa, at the same time, and I think it was just too much. Too much was going on, really. But I wouldn't ever say the alternative was better. But personally for me, spanking isn't a thing for me, but I do understand when I see, because I've got like nieces and nephews and things like that, when I see the parents get so frustrated, and like, for example, maybe if they've had a long day, the last thing you want to do is try to reason with a 2-year-old. Not to say that you're going to hit the 2-year-old, but it's kind of like, it's, you know, it's overwhelming. They're overwhelmed as well. So sometimes, like, I understand that they may lash out. I'm never saying it's right, because, you know, I'm not for it.
Yeah.
But I kind of understand where maybe people might smack, but I'm just not for smacking, because I just don't think children should be taught that resolving conflict or whatever has violence in any way to do with it, even if it was small. Like, for me, it's not. I mean, when I used just for me, it's just like, no, let's just take it out. Let's raise people to have great conflict resolution skills using their words, and let's challenge their communication skills and articulate. And it's all great in me saying that, because I'm not a parent, so honestly,
I mean,
it means nothing. Yeah, it's honestly, I'm saying this to you in a magical world, because I'm not a parent at all. But I've lost my train of thought about me not being a parent. me not being a parent, I can't tell you particularly how to discipline your child. But what I would say is just maybe try to speak to them as much as you can. But I know it's hard when you've got some kids that are just bad to the bizzo.
Bad to the bizzo. But this is what I was going to say, because like, I've never gotten to my wits' ends with a child that I'm raising, because I've never raised a child. So I'm coming from hypotheticals, but I think that, so I was spanked as a kid, and my younger brothers weren't, because like your parents, Anissa, they just got a bit tired. So my older sister and I received it more than they did. But I think that what I got in terms of physical punishment versus what my parents would have got from my Caribbean grandparents is like nothing in comparison. So I feel like as the generations are going down, it's just getting reduced, because my parents probably got the belt and then I'm getting the hand, and then my kids won't get anything, because I just don't think that I don't think it does more good than bad, so I just won't be doing it. And also, I can't really imagine myself like smacking a kid. I just don't think it's going to work for me. But,
I think it depends. Like, oh, sorry.
No, carry on.
I was going to say by some of the parents that I know, they said it really comes down to the specific child. So they're saying some children need different levels of discipline. So I know someone, they were like, one of my children, they went, you can talk to them and they will understand and they'll get it. They went, the other one, when it gets to a certain point, a little timely smack really brings across the message that we're trying to get, because they get to a level where they can't be talked to or reasoned with. So I think it really depends on the child. I think there's just so many different things to look at.
I don't know about that though.
No,
I don't know.
I agree with Sophie.
Because my sister has 3 children and they're all different and they all have to be disciplined in various ways. One might take something.
Okay, I'm not saying that children don't have to be disciplined in different ways, because everyone has their own individual personality. But I think that even so, you can still find a creative way that's going to hurt them, that doesn't involve a physical pain, you know? Because in terms of the messages that you're giving that child, like, I just don't want to ever teach them that some form of violence is going to solve a problem. And so I think you can take their Xbox, you can take their phone, all kids have a phone these days. You can say, you know, you're coming straight home after school, or, you know, take away, if they're going to like some fun school trip or a dance or something, you take it away. And I think for kids, when we're disciplining kids, I say me with all my children, when we're disciplining kids, we want like a fast resolution. So we want like, okay, I'm going to hit you and you're going to stop doing that thing. But I think it stings more if you take note of the thing, if you tell them you're going to be punished for this if you don't stop doing it, and then they don't stop doing it, and a week later when they've completely forgotten about it and they think that it's over because they've stopped crying, you say to them, you're not going to your friend's sleepover because you did this thing. I really don't think they're going to do that thing again, because what
Luanda, you are on some hardcore you were going to, like, don't you worry, I've remembered.
Oh my gosh.
You think I forgot? No problem. I'm gonna hold it out. Luanda, that's mean.
Give it to me live and
mean.
Give it to me live and direct.
Luanda, that's cold-blooded. It's cold. That's cold.
Listen, man. Listen, it's going to get you some results.
I think I'm in the medium between you, Sophie, and Luanda. I think each kid is different, so you have to approach discipline in a completely different way. But I'm with Luanda about getting it creative. Now, I've been an aunt for half of my life, really, actually more than half of my life. So I've been doing this a long time. So I've realised in my babysitting techniques that some kids respond to different things. So some kids I can sit down and reason with. Other kids, I just have to bring them to the mirror and say, look at yourself, you're a mess. What are you doing? Relax, calm down. At the same time,
guys, do you know what? I feel like spanking isn't the problem with you two. I feel like
the kids cry, they got spot all over their face. You have to bring them to the mirror and say, look at yourself.
You break spirits. That's what I say. You're trying to bring the child spirit into.
Honestly, you bring them to the mirror when they're crying and say, look at yourself, you're a mess. Is this what you want to do? And they look at the mirror, they look at you, they're confused. You say, no, you don't want to do it. And you wipe the tears and you push on. And it depends on the kids, I'm telling you. Because it hasn't worked with all of my nieces and nephews, but it's worked
I was going to say that. No, but shaming is actually a way not to discipline children. That's actually been a proven fact that by shaming children,
they look. Yes.
No, but shaming them actually does something to like their self-esteem and their sense of worth.
Yeah.
So it is a very fine line between. That's my thing about disciplining and stepping over the line, because just because you're not smacking them doesn't mean it's not having some sort of emotional effect. And I wanted to touch on something that Luanda said, because I read this article in The Atlantic and it was saying that families that come from a lower socio-economic background and have less access to money and education, physically discipline their children more. And one of the things they were showing is that they didn't have any means of showing any other discipline. So they couldn't take away electricals. They couldn't stop them from going on that school trip because they were never going anyway because they didn't have the money.
Right.
So they were saying it can also be dependent on what people have access to, where they're saying people who had more money, they were even lower middle class, there's a drastic change in seeing that they are more likely to take things away because there are things to take away. And they're saying people from a lower economic background will never take away allowance. Now, I say never, but most majority, they don't take away allowance because they're saying if you come from a poorer background, taking away allowance means that they might not have school dinners. Whereas they're saying for richer kids, they would take away an allowance because it's kind of like, well, it just means that you're not going to get that clothes or those trainers or whatever. So this debate really seems to differ depending on where you are in society, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
To bring it back to the second part of the question, do you think anybody has a right to tell anyone how to discipline their child?
It's very difficult because obviously you don't want to, first of all, step on people's toes.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, come from a place of judgment. But at the same time, you're allowed to care about children, even if you didn't give birth to them. And sometimes there are a lot of parents who, because, I was listening to a podcast the other day and it was saying how, when you get to that age, like late teens, early 20s, and then you realize your parents are actually just humans and they're actually just people as well.
Yeah.
And going from the perspective that parents are also just humans that make mistakes and have their own traumas and things like that. Sometimes parents don't do the work that is necessary on themselves before they bring another person into the world. And so
agree.
Sometimes you have an unhealthy person raising children in an unhealthy way. And in those cases, yeah, we need to talk about it.
100%. I agree. I personally try to not tell anyone to do anything with their child because I've been told clearly that's their person's child and that is their business. But I have no issue if I see something and I think I have a helpful suggestion to be able to lay out the suggestion. But I've learned it's the person's choice about whether they want my advice. And I've realized it's also had to be a bit solicited. Like they've had to ask me versus me saying, oh, do you know what you should do? But I now just say, oh, do you know what I just saw on this mummy blog? They were doing this, and then they kind of take my word a bit better because it's not just like me who's made it up.
Yeah, it's coming from another mother.
I think those sounded like some actually really good action points because I was really involved in my niece's early years because I live with my sister. So for the first two, I lived together when they were just babies up until whenever. And for me, I think I would only ever step in if I thought something was turning into abuse. Like if I saw someone and I thought this is actually abuse going on, then I would step in. But I think in general, I think people do have a right to discipline their children the way that they want. But I agree. I would never give unsolicited advice because my mom told me if people don't ask for it, they don't want it, don't give it. So I think if they look like they were struggling or a bit exasperated, it might be like, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? So that's what I would say.
Yeah, do you know what, Sophie? Actually, as you said that, I feel like the reason why I've given advice is because I feel like I'm so involved, even though at times I'm not that involved, but sometimes I'm really involved. So I'm like, for me, I'm just part of the parent tribe, so I feel like I should have to say, even though it's not my child. But at this point, I feel like I've become like my mum because at this point I have 7 nephews and 4 nieces. So I'm so I'm like tired now to the point where now I've got to the mirror because I have nothing else left in me. But before, maybe I would have sat down and spoken to you and been like, what are you doing? Now it's like, come, let's look. That
is the funniest thing.
So I feel like I've always given advice because I felt like I was entitled to, but I think that was my own issue.
Yeah. But I think when you're an auntie, you're going to love your nieces and nephews like they're your own children until you have your own children. And that's just going to be what it is, So we have reached the halfway point of the show. So don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. So far we have talked about the backlash that diversity have received after their much talked about performance on Britain's Got Talent. And we have talked about whether or not it's okay to smack your child as a form of punishment and if we believe that this form of punishment should be outlawed. So while psychologists are trying to figure out whether it's a form of punishment that is successful actor John Boyega has stepped down from being a global brand ambassador for the British cologne Jo Malone. So he made a short film which he conceptualized and directed and starred in, but in the Chinese leg of the global campaign, they actually replaced him with another actor and did not let him know. Of course, it's quite common for brands to do this when they're trying to feed to a local market. So do we think that these people were just doing their jobs, or do we think that John is correct in resigning?
I think John is 100% correct in resigning. 100%. And I don't think that... I saw John Boyega's tweet when he put it out that he was stepping down. He was also very aware, and he said, I understand that sometimes they use different ambassadors in different regions. So he gets that. The point is, for me, this is intellectual property theft. This was his ideas.
Listen, say that again. Intellectual property.
I'm telling you, that's when intellectual property theft is, when you steal people's ideas and things and then you try to pass it off as your own. That's what happened. I digress. But in the social network, that's one of the things that they had to pay out for, because they're like, it was somebody else's idea. And even though Mark Zuckerberg had the skills to make it happen, they're like, the point is, it was somebody else's idea and he had to pay out tens upon tens of millions to those people. It's intellectual property theft. And that's what's going on with John Boyega. If this was his idea, if he based it on his culture, his family was in it, he helped to direct it, you didn't compensate him. You didn't confirm with him. You didn't ask his permission. He had to find it on social media. I just have massive respect for John Boyega for actually stepping down, because he could have been upset about this in public, but do you know what? I'm still going to collect a check. But he came out and was just like, no, you don't do this to people. I'm not going to work with you. So massive respect. He made the right decision, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Sophie. I think he made the right decision. I do understand that, sometimes people want to cater to that particular market, so they'll use that particular person. But the fact that they would reshoot his whole commercial, his whole story, and not have him in it, it's absolutely shocking. And I think it speaks to this whole myth or lie that there is in Hollywood, or just in general, anytime you see media, that Black people's stories aren't universal, or we are not relatable when you see us on screen. So therefore you need someone who's a bit more relatable. And I just find that just crazy. I just find it shocking. Now, so the reason why I go, because I don't know if they did it on purpose. I just think it was one of those things they may have done unconsciously. Okay, we're putting this ad in China, so maybe let's get someone who reflects more of that market. I don't think they were doing it to purposefully hurt John, but I think that unconsciousness was still a way of them I think it was still them neglecting Black stories, but they were doing it unconsciously. I don't think it was particularly targeted, okay, let's go away with John. I know that sounds crazy to say, but that's what I think.
For the most part, I'm in the same boat as you guys, because I definitely, personally have a lot of respect for John Boyega as well, as a person, but also for what he created. And we saw that this did well. We saw, it even won an award for Best Campaign at a fragrance award show. So this short film that he has made has received its successes. And if it's globally successful, there's only one reason why you don't think he's going to be marketable, and that reason is very obvious. If we're going to explore the idea that people were doing it to appeal to the local market, please just let me know where in the remake we did that. Apart from just changing the people, where did that happen? Because in John's original short film, he merged his British culture with his Nigerian culture. It was really a beautiful piece that they created. In the second one, it was scene for scene, the same thing, minus John's culture, but there was no insertion of a new culture. You just changed the folks. We still saw horses and bicycles and a party, but that could have been anywhere in the world. And Anissa, I don't think it was that unconscious, because I believe that if this was Justin Bieber advertising for Jo Malone, they would see him as being being marketable in every corner of the world. So I think that even if you want to, you know, do the argument of we're trying to localize it for this particular market, then if you're hiring this man because you value his creativity, then why was he not creatively involved in this remake? They could have came to a compromise. They could have came to some sort of compensation. Like Sophie said, they could have worked on this together, but you didn't tell him, you just replaced him, and he saw it online, and that is rough.
It's tough, but you know the media's not an easy game. I know that's one game, but that's what I'm not like the media isn't famous for doing business well. Like they notoriously do people dirty, so I can't expect more of them. Of course, I think what they've done is crazy. I'll never say what they've done is great, but I'm never going to expect anything from them. I really am not. I just don't.
A heads up? You can't expect a heads up.
You can't trust people in this life, Luanda. You cannot.
That is not news.
So you shouldn't expect for anyone to give you a heads up. You shouldn't. Honestly, you should not.
I think Jo Malone did a real disservice here, because Jo Malone actually came out when all the Black Lives Matter thing was going on, and they said specifically they are making a pledge to increase their black talent in front of the camera and behind the camera. True stories. Then when stuff started happening, people were like, what's going on? They were like, actually, it's just going to be in the US and in regions where it's appropriate. And that really annoyed me, because what I was thinking was just like, what you mean is if black people aren't marketable, you're not going to use them. If an ethnic minority isn't marketable, because you're saying appropriate, I'm just like, that's a very large brush that you're sweeping here. That's the word. That's a broad brushstroke there. So what does that actually mean? So I think Jo Malone, we're happy to take the credit and just think that we can transfer things over and no one's going to realise. But John realised, and didn't John tell you this year he's not messing about with anyone doing foolishness?
I can't wait to marry John.
I'm glad they showed their ass this quickly, because I've been waiting for these fake and phony. No, I've been waiting for these fake and phony brands who sent out so much messages of support, and they were going to do so much great things for black people, and we all knew it was fake, and we were just waiting for their fake and phony ass to show themselves. And here we go. I'm glad it was quick this year for us to see.
I think what's upsetting as well is that I think for a lot of people who don't live in like a culturally diverse environment, the way that you learn from other cultures, or the way that you learn of other cultures, is through the media. So when you actually have an opportunity to show, if you're marketing to a country that you think is not going to accept like a black man selling this product, they're not going to buy it if a black man is selling it, but you have an opportunity to show this film that was full of family and parties and gatherings and love and things like that. We have this opportunity to open the perspective of the black community through this lens, and you decide that the money is more important, then, like Anissa said, you are showing your ass a little bit, because you're saying that, okay, we can have it in the US and we can have it in the UK, but if they're not going to buy it here, we're not going to put it here. But you can actually be part of the solution by putting it there and changing perspectives, because people might surprise you.
The thing is, though, Luanda, I would have been in fact, I was 100% in that camp until I read something in the Global Web Index, and it was talking about marketing, and it was saying the way to best market is to localize your advertising. So they're saying across the board, when people see that you've taken the step to kind of tap into the local culture, it helps your brands to increase. So, for example, Coca-Cola, I don't know if you remember when they sold those bottles with the names on them. And they had like the names. So they said what Coca-Cola did was they looked in the various areas where it was being advertised, and they would make sure that names that were more popular in those countries or areas were put on bottles. And they said that there was a sharing frenzy of the bottles. Also Nike, when it was like, was it proud to be a Londoner, or I'm a Londoner? They localized the advert, and they said Nike's online searches went up 93% because they did it in Peckham, and they were trying to show this is the real London. And when I saw that, I was just like, oh my, exactly. I was just like, this represents me.
I love gigs.
You need to behave yourself.
Localizing isn't actually a problem. So when I read that in the article, I was just like, okay, I can understand for a Chinese audience, they're kind of like a Chinese person's going to fit better, even though there are some instances of racism in Chinese adverts. But It's what they did. It's like you said, taking someone's personal story related to their culture and then trying to translate it by just putting someone of the similar race in it. That's where I have the issue. But when it comes to localizing, if they're going to do an advert about the Caribbean, but they're just going to put, no, in fact, I've got a better example. When you travel to other countries, when I've gone to countries in Africa, when I've gone to the Caribbean, South America, you don't want to see posters of Justin Bieber. A lot of times you see people of their local stars and their local talent. You might not recognize who they are, but to the people there, they're like, I recognize that person, and them selling it is going to have a greater effect than seeing John Boyega, because this is somebody who we know, who is lived in our culture. So it does work. It's just the way that Jo Malone went about it.
I agree, and I think that's why in the beginning I said I can understand why they did it. And the only reason why I'm thinking like that is because I had to go and work in East Asia for a while, a couple of years ago. And I wasn't in China, but I was in Japan working. And guys, honestly, they had like a lot of the English stuff we had, they had just remade it and had their own characters and names and things like that. And it wasn't too offensive thing. It was just like, it was just so it could appeal to their market. So I don't know if it was like the advertising team in London from Jo Malone, or if it was the advertising team central in China, because maybe it might be a cultural thing and they were like, okay, well, this is the advert, let's make it Chinese and let's do this. So that's why I think I'm not sure if it was on purpose, because it depends on where the team was located for me. That's where my point was.
So with localizing, I 100% understand that in terms of marketing, because it is a smart marketing strategy and it does work. And I did read that with Jo Malone, they actually get most of their Chinese audiences through posts that they've made with Chinese actors, which is why they wanted to have a Chinese actor in the second version of the advertisement. My issue is you could have had the best of both worlds, and you could have merged. If John Boyega is the global ambassador and you want a Chinese actor, you can genuinely have both. And I think you could have aimed to not say reach a higher audience, because I do believe that they probably wouldn't have responded to him as much as the actor. Even when I looked at how they made his face on the Star Wars poster literally smaller than the robots in China for Star Wars. They made it smaller than the robot, Anissa. It was ridiculous. So I think that if you want to be, like Sophie said at the beginning, they're talking about how they're going to be taking all these steps. If you actually want to be part of the solution, you can be. Because how beautiful would it have been if you just had, John and then a couple of famous actors like eating at the same table and interacting with each other and broadening people's perspectives on the Black community. Like there isn't anything that is more demonized than Black men and Black people. So you had an opportunity there to try and reverse some of that psychology, and you just chose the money instead.
Yeah, I think they definitely chose the easy way out. And it just really made me think as well about other instances where they just cut Black people out of things. Like, I don't know if you guys saw, but there was an article in The Guardian about a Ugandan climate activist who was literally cut from a picture because, and then when she said this is racism, they were just like, oh, there was a building behind you that wasn't appealing, so we cut the building and you. So I just think this Jo Malone thing is, I think with this Jo Malone thing, we are now seeing Black people or ethnic minorities standing up and saying, this has been going on for a long time. John Boyega isn't the first person to have his ideas stolen, but he's just like, this is not acceptable. And I hope we see more people willing to stand up. But if they don't, they're affecting their own bag. Do you know what I mean? So John Boyega has taken this step and it's affected him because that's money he's not getting. So I understand both sides of it, but hopefully we are starting to see a shift of people saying, give me my receipts. If I gave you the idea, pay me for it.
100%. I agree.
Okay, so I wanted to talk to you ladies about something else that is very interesting in regards to money. Now, I don't know if you know TV presenters Vernon Kay and his wife Tess Daly, but they have said that they are leaving none of their £5 million fortune to their children, and they are not the only ones saying this. So Bill Gates, Sting, TV chef Nigella Lawson have all made similar pledges. By removing the expectation of a financially secure future, these stars believe that they are actually encouraging their children to learn more about grafting hard in order to make a living. So I want to know, if you can afford it, That's the key point. If you can afford it, will you leave your children an inheritance, or do you feel that they should really be purely making their way through the world by themselves and be self-made?
So for me, I think it's a difficult one, because normally I would say you have to make a way for your own. That's just, I'm kind of like a tough love person in that way. But it's difficult for me to say that as a Black person. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, especially Western society, we are still playing catch up in a lot of ways. So we need to, the more advantage you can give to the next person then in your family, then you should give it. Do you know what I mean? So if I had an inheritance, I'm going to say that for my immediate children, if I've got enough for cousins, extended, just so that we can continue to build either generational wealth or more advantage, and for them to have more of a privileged life. But if I had not come from that background, I personally would just say no. I honestly would say no. I only say, the reason why I say that is because I just don't understand. I really think able-bodied people should get up and go make their own money. I just am of that belief. If you're grown and you are able-bodied, I don't understand why you wouldn't make your own money. So for me, it's always just a no. But because of the reasons of me being Black, I'm going to say yes.
I understand what you are getting at with the generational wealth, definitely. And I think, you know, if we look at it from the perspective of leaving your children without money, there are already so many obstacles that we're going to face just because, you know, we are Black as well. So it's not just going to be having nothing in the bank. There are already, it's not going to be as simple as getting up and making your own money, because there are barriers in place for us. And I think, you know, this question is very personal to me because I'm very rich in my mind and and all of my unborn children have personalities. So it's hard for me to answer that question. I think that you need to strike a balance, because sometimes people have money as the goal in life, and I don't think it's the most important thing that you can achieve in your life. I think I'd rather raise my children to believe that they have purpose. And if I feel like they believe that they have purpose by the time I'm dying, I'm going to leave them money to fulfill that purpose. I actually, to be honest, yeah, I'm just going to leave them money. I'm just going to be reasonable about it, though. Yeah, I'm going to leave my kids some money.
I think for me, like, I definitely agree with leaving an inheritance. How much you leave is probably the question that I'm less kind of like, well, it depends on circumstances.
And when they have access to it.
When they have access to it, yeah, because knowing how hard it is in the UK to get onto the housing market, if I'm able to leave some money behind to help my children buy a house and be like, look, your house is set up, or half of your deposit is set up whenever you want to do it. So that's one less thing that you have to worry about. So you can focus on not having to sign up for 35 years for a mortgage, or finding your dream job without this noose of a mortgage around your neck. Then I'm going to do that. The thing that I take umbrage with is people like Bill Gates or Vernon Kay and Tess Daly or Sting, all these people saying that they want their children to graft. And I was really angry at that statement, to be honest. Yeah, really angry at it, because they're saying that they're not going to leave their children any money, but they're going to pay for their children to have a high-end education. Some might have gone to private schools. They're going to get job opportunities off their last name alone. They're going to be able to travel the world in order to see different cultures, which is really going to help their experience of the world. All these various things that these children are going to get just growing up, because they're not saying, well, they're saying we're not going to leave an inheritance, but I'm just like, but they're still going to get access to the best sorts of education that you can have, which is already giving them a step up. And knowing that you're Bill Gates' child, it's probably going to be easier for you to get that internship. So when they're saying that we're going to leave no money, I'm like, you're already giving them a lot of privilege already that a lot of people don't get. So you trying to say, I want them to graft through the world. It makes me think of Donald Trump saying that his father gave him a small loan of £1 million, £1 million in order to start his business. Or Kylie Jenner saying she's self-made, because she's like, well, I took my own money and I put it into it. But you're like, do you know what I mean? That's the kind of realm that I think that they're kind of talking about. And I'm thinking, you equating grafting hard with the struggles that people have just to get an education, they're not the same for me.
Yeah, but I think I almost took that statement in a different way, Sophie. I felt like they were saying basically, we will set you up for the first 18 years of your life. You will get the best schools, you'll get the access to everything that you possibly need to make this work in life. And then once you've got that, you are on your own, and now you've got to figure out how to use all the tools that you have. That's what I took from that. Yeah. That's what I took from that statement. And that's why I was kind of like on the agreement with it. It's like, yes, for me, it's just, I don't know if I've just seen a lot of spoiled adults, and so I just don't think people need to, I just don't think people need to be enabled more than they need to be. Like, honestly, you are a grown adult, you know how to function in life. Please cut the umbilical cord and just do for your own. Just, that's all that I need you to do. Just do for your own. And I know it would be great, but it's so difficult because this is what I truly believe. But I know because of my culture and everything that I have to give whoever's after me the leg up just because of how the world is. But if I did not have to, I want you to go out and do your own. I just think everyone should be independent. And I know it's different from other people's ideal of family and structure and all that kind of stuff. But that's why we're all great, because we're all different and have our own opinions. But I personally just think you have to do it on your own. It's tough love. Figure it out. Be an adult. Be a real person in this world and get it together. So that's why I'm just kind of like, I'm not leaving you anything. There's nothing for me to leave. I can give it to someone who's less fortunate. Hopefully by the time I'm passing, you are going to be at least in your 40s and have figured something out, so you're not waiting for me to croak so you can get it together. It's
a good point. We do need to think about the ages that our children will be when we die. And I'm dying at 101. So my kids have already lived a large part of their lives. I think they've already made their own money and they're okay. No. No, I have a lot of things to do. So 101, that's the goal. I could do 111. It's, as long as I get past 100, it's fine. But I think that there was a article that I read that I found kind of funny, and there was this couple who owned a restaurant and a hotel, and they said that their plans before they died was to blow all of their money, and they sold the hotel, they sold the restaurant, and they brought like a camper van thing to travel the world on, and they just wanted to live a great life, travel the world for the rest of their days and splurge. And I thought that was fantastic, because I think the most important thing that those parents could have given their children is self-belief. Because if my parents are self-starters and they're entrepreneurs and they've created this for themselves and they've been able to live a life and provide me with such a great life, and like we keep saying, by the time that they die, we're going to be 30s, 40s anyway, we'll be okay. And they said something along the lines of, I don't feel an ounce of guilt for not leaving them anything. And I'm thinking, you do you. Like, if you want to spend your golden years running around in a van, sightseeing, eating as much food as you want, drinking wine, then do that, because you made that life for yourself. You've already provided your children in their early years what they need, what the necessities were, you know, food, water, shelter, and school. And now you get to live your life for yourself. They said, we've worked so hard and this is my reward, to enjoy my money, enjoy the money that I've earned. And I completely agree with that.
Luanda, I can imagine you in that van. Just driving. She's off.
I think one of the issues, because I think I read the same article actually, Luanda, and I think one of the things in it was them saying, you know, now that we're retired, you know, we've put off things and we're going to do it. And that's the bit that is the issue for me. Like, when parents are saying that we haven't done anything in our lives but raise our children, so now we're going to, you know, live the life we've always wanted to live. And well, maybe this is touched on another issue, but I feel like that's the wrong way to go about it. Like, I take personal offense in my spirit to people who are just like, I put everything on hold for my children. They're everything, and we haven't done anything but to focus on them. Because something that my dad said at my sister's birthday, and he gave this lovely speech, and he said to her, don't put off anything that you want to do. He went, do it now. Do it now, and don't wait until retirement, because it might never come. And my dad has reached retirement age, but he was saying, like, he looks back on his life and he hasn't got any regrets. For people who were saying, like, I'm not going to leave my children anything because, you know, they basically took up my entire life and now I'm going to splurge in it all. For me, there's something else going on there that was incorrect, because I feel like you should be trying to still make time to do things together and to travel together. But maybe they never had the money until they were older. I don't know. But yeah, for me, I still think leave them a little something. Leave them a little cushion so that life is easier.
Yeah, but I think the sentimental gifts will mean more. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you guys have had anyone who
can't pay the mortgage with the sentimental.
Maybe the favorite necklace I used to wear, or my favorite perfume, or the blanket, things for you to remember me by, not my money in the house. I would prefer to give sentimental things that had great meaning.
Vernon Kay and Tess Daly saying that they're not going to give them any of their £5 million fortune. For me, I was just like, a house in London, 4-bedroom, could cost you 2.5. Like, let's be very realistic about what we're saying we're going to bequeath to our children. If they live in an expensive area, you leaving them £1 million is not going to get them through the rest of their life. That is literally going to make sure that they can probably buy somewhere and have a little rainy day and probably buy a new car, and then your money's done. So if you're Bill Gates, I think it is very different. Like, if you are a billionaire and you have money that you cannot spend in your lifetime, leaving that all to your children is going to just make them reckless because they have nothing to anchor them. So I think it differs on the amount of money that you get, because I saw in this article and it was saying that 85% of people who leave an inheritance leave 250,000 and less, and the majority of that is under 50,000. And that money is not life-changing money. Let's be honest. Like, when you're a kid, if someone told you could get 50 grand, you're like, oh my days, I'll be rich forever. When you get older, you're like, I mean, I'm going to live for 2 years and then I'm going to see what happens. So I think it really depends as well on the amount of money.
Yeah, I agree with you on the amount of money, but I think that you should have raised your children at this, if you're on your deathbed, when we're talking wills and we're talking inheritance, or you're at that age, your children should have already been raised to a point where they value life and they value themselves enough to do something with their lives, and they should have gotten
and have a work
that perspective
ethic
from you. Yeah, and they should already have a work ethic.
I agree.
So therefore, they should have money as well. It'd be fine.
Exactly. The thing is, an inheritance should always be like a really sad reminder that your parents is gone. It shouldn't be the thing that you're looking forward to. Like, when are they just going to kick my bucket because I need that money?
Could we just circle back to my favourite couple real quick? Because I just need to defend them. So I don't think
Who's your favourite couple?
So the couple with the restaurant and the hotel.
The van. Okay, yes.
Yeah, they weren't living this lifestyle out of revenge for the years that they think their children have taken away from them. Actually, they've just lived their lives being workers. Like most of us, we have to, wake up every day and earn a living. And they have just been earning a living for most of their life. They've raised a family, and now for the first time, their children are adults and they get to think about themselves. And I don't think it's a bad thing to look at your life and be like, okay, I've got 10 years, maybe 15 left. Let me just do what I want to do. It doesn't mean you're not going to give your kids presents and see them at Christmas and visit them and have trips with them, but it means that you finally, no strings attached, just get to live your life for yourself. You don't have to think about a mortgage. You don't have to think about nappies and toothpaste and school bills and uniforms. You just get to do whatever you want to do. And I think it's a brilliant stage of life to get at.
Definitely.
May we all get there.
May we all.
I think what I've definitely learned from this is that children are sticky. Either I have to discipline them, or I have to leave them money, but it's all
Anissa said drag them. Anissa said drag them to the mirror.
I said bring them
Let
to
them
the mirror.
Look at themselves and ask them, this is what they want. Is this who you want to be?
I said bring. Take them to the mirror and challenge them.
Don't believe you.
I think we've learnt many reasons why I should probably not embark on motherhood. Anyway. At this moment. Thank you for watching and listening to another episode of Ethnically Speaking. We've loved every minute of it, and if you have too, do not forget to give us a thumbs up. Let's keep the conversation going. Would you leave your child an inheritance, or do you think they should learn the value of the hard work? Let us know in the comments below, and if you want even more from us, be sure to subscribe to our email list and get access to Extra Ethnic, which is a special segment for our most ride or die fans that's available exclusively via email. There is a link to sign up in the description. For a summary of all that we've talked about today, head over to our website, unitedmelaningroup.com/ES015. The link for that is also in the description below. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Stay safe and stay alert. Bye.